Hi, I'm Lily. Today I'm going to read you a story. Grandma's Homework. Reading it to level 3A. Grandma's Homework. Okay, let's read it. The winter sunlight announced the morning. The frost that had bloomed on the window began to melt. Kira's grandma wiped the window thoroughly because the moisture would freeze again with the cold of the next evening. The window banged against the frame whenever she wiped it with a cloth. Grandma, are you cleaning again? Carol, wearing her pajamas and rubbing her eyes, came out to the living room. Her grandma liked to clean. Whenever the news was on TV, she turned it off and wiped the screen with a dry cloth. The house was always clean, with not even an outdated newspaper to be seen. You're all ready? It's winter break. You don't have to go to school. Why don't you sleep some more? Kira's grandma went to the kitchen. While Kira followed her grandma, she smelled the sharp menther from the muscle relaxant patch on her back. Grandma, I have to do homework. What homework? You're only in first grade. Don't worry about it. Just be healthy and eat well, her grandma said while evenly slicing some tubu. Tubu. Kurt remembered what her teacher had said. If she completes her homework well, there will be a big prize. She wanted to do better than Yuna, who had done a better job than her on last summer's homework assignment. Kurt was the vice president of her class, and she wanted to excel in everything at school. Grandma, look at this. It's a winter break announcement letter from my school. Her grandma looked it over. Kara pointed to the middle of it with her index finger. Read this part. Let's see. Homework. Choice. Write a travel report or make a family newspaper. Well, you can choose one of those two. Kara was sitting at the table with her chin in her hands. Grandma, can we take a trip? A trip? We can't. Your grandpa and I have to work. Too bad. I wish I could write a travel report. Kara was disappointed. Her grandma rubbed her sore shoulder. Whenever she faced any difficulty, she managed her shoulder. It was a habit of hers, and her heart ached as the freezing wind was blowing on her. Watching her grandma get awkwardly smiled and said, Grandma, don't worry, I will make a family newspaper instead of a terrible report. Grandma stopped rubbing her shoulder. Are you sure? What a good girl. Your grandpa will bring a newspaper soon. We can get some ideas from there. Yes, that is a great idea. Kira clapped her hands in excitement. Kira's grandma was glad to see her happy. At that moment, the front door opened. Her grandpa, who worked as a building guard, returned home, his knife shirt from his night shirt. Kira was glad to see the newspaper more than her grandpa. Grandpa, can I see the newspaper? Even before he wiped his cord glasses and had fogged up, he handed the newspaper over to Kira. Turning the newspaper's page, Kira made a face in disappointment. Grandma, which one should I use as a sample? There are more than one. There are more than 10 stories. She sat by her and turned the pages. In fact, her grandma did not like reading newspapers because there were so many stories that she did not want to know about. So, as expected, underneath the large headline of accident of frozen road like this, and there was a picture of two cars that had crashed into each other. So the collision was too bad. The collision was so bad that the shape of the cars was almost unrecognizable. She felt her heart drop, thinking of her son. She didn't even look at the story and turned the page quickly. On the next page, there was a story about an athlete who was posing with a bright smile, wearing a medal around his neck. Curious grandpa, not knowing what was going on, said, Why or interest in the newspaper? So, Okay, so she felt her heart drop. Thinking of her son, she didn't even look at the story and turned the page quickly. On the next page, there was a story about an athlete who was posing with a bright smile, wearing a medal around his neck. Kira's grandpa, not knowing what was going on, said, "Why are interested in the newspaper? What's going on? Any big news?" He felt sleepy since he had worked all night and yawned longer than usual. Kira answered, "Grandpa, I have to make a newspaper." "A newspaper? You? What are you talking about? How are you going to make a newspaper?" Kira was frustrated and sighed. "Oh, it's not a real newspaper. It's a family newspaper. I have to do my winter break homework, but I can't make one like this. What can I do? It's too difficult." Kira began to worry that she would never be able to finish it. She wanted her newspaper to be the best in her class. Actually, she was good. She was a good student and was very mature for her age, but at home she acted a bit childish. "Grandma, Grandpa, have you ever made a newspaper?" They shook their heads left and right. So Kyar frustrated and was about to cry. Her grandma did not know what to do. She was upset and couldn't understand why the children's homework was so hard. The bong of the clock's pendulum rang 8 times. It was about time for her to go to the daycare center, and her grandma had to work at the market. Her grandma looked at the faded picture by the clock. It was a picture of her son and daughter-in-law smiling innocently. She had made mad at them for having left this world as if they had run away. She took some medicine for her upset stomach. Kira's grandpa, observing what was going on, said, "My goodness, what's to worry about? Just ask your teacher at the daycare center." Her grandpa gently pinched Kira's cheeks with his big hands, and her face turned bright again. "Yeah, that's an idea. Since Yuna will be there too, I'm going to ask her which homework assignment she plans to work on." Her grandma felt better to see that Kara had stopped worrying about and looked very positive. She also decided to ask her young customers about the homework too. Kara's grandma ran a rice cake shop where the corner was a straight meet the marketplaces. She put the freshly steamed rice cakes on the counter and waited for customers. Many people passed by, but rarely did anyone drop in to buy rice cakes. In the afternoon, a customer came in. "Give me 2 packages of these rice cakes," said a lady carrying a shopping basket as she pointed to one pack. Kira's grandma picked up in 2 bags and put them in a plastic bag. "Is that a snack for your young children? By chance, do you have any children who attend the elementary school in this district?" "Yes, I have 2 children, one in the second grade and the other in the fourth." She was so glad to hear that. "Ah, then you will know what to do. I have to help my granddaughter with her homework, but I do not know anything about it. Do you mind if I ask you a question?" "Not at all. What is it?" She offered the lady a few pieces of the steamed rice cake for her kindness. "See, my granddaughter has to make a newspaper. Do you know how to make it?" The lady put the rice cake in her mouth and chewed. "Thanks, that tastes really good. You mean the family newspaper, right? It's not hard to make at all. You write the names of each family member and write about them, such as mother and father, who they are, what they do, what they are like, things like that. It is writing stories about her family members like news." "Family stories?" "Yes, there is nothing much to do. It's only a first grade children assignment. Just put in a family picture and the rice stories beside it." "Ooh, it's called 'Here is the money for the rice cakes.'" After she paid and left, Kira's grandma was alone and felt a heaviness in her chest. How can we write a family story? She felt a tightness in her chest. She looked inside her bag. She saw the keys, wallet, and cell phone. "Where's my medicine? Where's a medicine?" At home, she had been too busy thinking about Kara's homework, so she had forgotten her pills. She took a deep breath. She felt pressure on her chest and became lightheaded. White steam rose in the air through the lid of the rice cake steamer. When she opened the lid with her shaking hands, hot steam engulfed her face. Suddenly an ambulance wailed by. Wee-ya, wee-ya, and she was stirred. She was stirred. She was started. Also, the sound reminded her of her son and daughter-in-law lying in their beds in the emergency room. The terrible memory that was buried deep in her heart disappeared like a tsunami. Carol, just an infant on her back at the time, she had been crying hard. The baby was hungry and looked for a mother, but she was helpless. White sheets were used to cover her son and daughter-in-law. No, no, it can't be my son. Sock, sock. The image of her son began to scuttle in the white steam. Instinctively, she reached out her hand. Then her right hand touched the edge of the hot steamer, and she got burned. She jumped back in surprise and pulled herself together. Cold sweat ran down her back. Why again? She looked at her hand. It was red and started to blister. On the way back home, she dropped by a drugstore. What happened? Asked the pharmacist as as she checked her hand. She picked an over-the-counter ointment. Sitting on a chair, yes, Grandma replied. I burned my hand on the steamer. I used to cook rice cakes. She forced a smile. The pharmacist looked at her and said, here is some ointment and a bandage for the burn. Well, do you also want heartburn medicine and some muscle relaxant patches? She was a regular customer at this pharmacy. On the way back home, she often bought her heartburn medicines and the muscle relaxant patches. The pharmacist put the medicine in a bag and handed it to her. This ointment will relieve the throbbing. It looks rather seriously. If it doesn't get better and pus comes out, go to the hospital. You don't want it to get infected. At the ward hospital, she felt bitter. She wanted to avoid going to the hospital because of the memory of the day her son had died there. It will be fine, like the heartburn medicine and muscle relaxant patches will relieve my pain. It will heal soon. She put the medicine in a purse and went home. Grandma, are you okay? Claire followed her grandma like a shadow. She didn't even pay attention to her favorite TV program because she was fixated on her grandma's hand. Her grandma applied ointment to the burn and wrapped it with the white bandage. Her grandma, who had to go to the work for the night shift, was also worried. Her grandpa, are you sure you shouldn't go to the hospital? Why the right hand? It will be awkward to use your left hand. Her grandma didn't say nothing. The evening news started on TV and she stood up and turned it off. She got a rag and started to wipe the same spot on the floor over and over again with her left hand. She pushed over the hand of the rag. She wanted to wipe again all the bad news in the world. Carrie's grandma for, forcefully took the rag away from her. Stop that, that's enough. You need to take a rest, he said gently, keeping Carrie in mind. Please stop thinking about the past and the hospital too. She looked at him with tears in her eyes. He couldn't continue what he wanted to say. Kior, not knowing what was going on, asked, Grandpa, are you scared of the hospital? Aren't you? Do you want me to go with you? She shook her hand. No, since I put some ointment on, it will be okay. By the way, about the homework, do you want to do that? It's okay if you don't get the prize. It's no big deal. No way, Grandma. I will do my homework. Uh, no way, Grandpa. No way, Grandpa. I will do my homework. I asked the daycare teacher how to do it. It's not difficult at all. Just introducing our family. She tried to hide her worry and stroked girl's head gently. Listen, girl, about making a family newspaper. Don't worry, Grandma. My teacher told me that she would help. Since you now also wanted to make a family newspaper, we will order our new We worked on our newspapers in our class today. Look at this, Grandma. Girl took out pieces of paper from her backpack. Grandpa saw the title, The News of Car's Family. On the first page there was a picture drawn in the space under my family. My family. Girl was excited as she showed the newspaper to her grandma. Look, this is our house. This is you cleaning the room. This is Grandpa reading the newspaper, and this is me reading a book. My teacher said I could draw pictures instead of using photos, and this is her grandma stared at the picture. The window in the picture was wide open. Outside the window, two people with broad smiles were looking inside home. Carol pointed at them and said, "Grandma, this is Mom and Dad." She felt a sharp pain, like yours was, had stabbed her heart. Carol's story was beside the picture. There are 5 people in my family. I live with my grandma and grandpa. My mom and dad live in heaven. They went there when I was a baby. It's sad, but it's okay since I have my grandma and grandpa. Besides, I can see my mom and dad every day in our family pictures. My grandpa is a guard and he works at night. My grandma is the queen of cleaning our house, so our house is always spotless. But because she works so much, her shoulder and stomach ache. She takes medicine for her stomach ache and puts a patch on her shoulder. I worry a lot about my grandma. I love my grandma and grandpa the most in the world. My family is blessed. Grandma, what do you think? Do you like it? Yes, Grandma couldn't take her eyes off the family newspaper. She felt so relieved that the problem of the homework had been taken care of. It was as if a lump pressing hard in the pit of her stomach and suddenly disappeared. Her grandpa saw she couldn't speak, so he said to her, "Wow, it looks wonderful, very well done." He was delighted by his praise and said, "Grandpa, tomorrow I am going to make another page of our family newspaper. Do you want me to write a story about your work as a guard?" "Sure, I would like that very much." "How about you, Grandma?" "Yeah, a story about your barn." Tears came to her eyes as she looked at her in the excitement, innocent girl. "Yes, please, write with me too. A story about a strong grandma healed completely after an injury. Do you hear me?" Then she looked at her injured hand. The throbbing pain had already started to subside. She looked through her tears and up at the family picture. Her son and daughter-in-law were smiling brightly in the picture. Bye!